Hello people, so it's a bit of a Mr. Grumpy today. I'm not happy with the lack of progress and some bad things happening, particularly some things being taken out. Anyway, this is all based on a presentation I did way back on the 11th of May. This is last week's presentation here. And we're 3 months into a lockdown or coming out of lockdown. We've had 3 months and a lot of stuff should be happening, which is good, but it isn't as much as it should be. And we are at crunch time. Okay, do email me here if you want the precise links. It will be going up with the rapid response service on both YouTube, and you can get the slides from Simon Still. Okay, so the general news is there appears to be delays from the things I was talking about last week. That's the department letting England highway authorities know about the success of tranche 1 bids. I may be wrong, do let me know if I've missed that. The invitations we were told 10 days ago should have been going out last week, probably requiring more public engagement. I don't think they have. The updated National Cycling and Walking Plan was due this month, but I've since been told that it's not going to happen until next month. Okay, so first of all, the voucher scheme also, the 25 million quid for vouchers, that was supposed to have been happening, but no sign of that being rolled out. Do we have to fight to retain temporary infrastructure from being removed? Because some stuff is being removed. And good news, Wales has got 15.4 million quid. Okay, some statistics. Firstly, 53% of employees living in cities have said that they were considering cycling to work in one of the surveys. That's good. Now, Danny Williams said 20% only of bus passengers are shifting to bike in Germany, which he thought wasn't very good. But if that happened in London, that would double the number of London cycling trips. I did a bit of homemade calculations on that. Now, today we had a study from the Bartlett's School of Architecture, and they said there is space for wide cycle lanes on 18% of London's roads. That's 1,500 miles of London's roads. To which Mr. Dave Hill said that's only the number of cyclists in London, which suggests he's not really that together. Cycling is up has been said to be up by 42% in Greater Manchester since before lockdown. Between the beginning of May and beginning of June, there was a 35% increase in one company's motor insurance claims, indicating that more people are coming back onto the roads, not watching out that much. Here's another figure. People reported this as 5% of the population. It's actually 5% of consumers. That's 1.2 million people bought bikes in the lockdown. And in fact, the outlook for the rest of this year isn't that good. Now, the big figure, Grant Shapps on 18th of June said there'd been a 70% increase in UK cycling since mid-March. Now, my comment on that is that a few weeks ago it was a 100% increase. It's now gone down to 70% increase because there's been some rain and people are getting back into cars. I would also say that between mid-March and 18th of June or now, we would have expected something like a 20% increase. So I'm saying there's been overall something like about a 50% increase. And we really need to work hard to keep that up, to stop people going onto cars, and we need to try and stop so many people going back into cars, and we need to make everything safer for the people who do want to start cycling and the people who are already there. So there are some figures. a couple of articles, or one article from London Cycling Campaign, which is relevant to everybody, how to get money for temporary cycle schemes. And it's described here on this link. And it's about the use of the rapid cycleway promotion tool with prioritization for roads with the highest cycling potential. And you must read that. Okay, now here's my concern. Sorry about not all these flying up together. Is problems with pop-up cycle lanes at side road junctions. And I'm talking about left hooks as you're going along a main road with a side road and someone turning left across you, and vehicles exiting with drivers not looking. Now, the second part of that we saw when Jeremy Vine a few weeks ago noted ahead of him a cyclist on a very narrow advisory cycle lane going up to a junction, and a van was nosing out and was in his way. And the response of Hammersmith and Fulham was to widen the advisory cycle lane, which is good. But what we saw last week from this rather nice video, which the excellent Jeremy Vine put up, was that even with a wide lane, what you can get is you're tootling along in the with the wands and or cones or whatever they are, protecting you, and drivers about to turn left have forgotten you're there, and so they left hook you. Now, how are you going to deal with this? And Richard Lewis said, well, it's very difficult, but you can do the following things, which we would like to see. Firstly, you can make it much tighter where the separation meets the junction, so the effective radius is smaller. That means cars, vans, etc., about to turn left have to slow down. They have to look more at where you're going to be. So we'd like that. Secondly, he talks about colored surfacing and temporary or permanent speed tables or blended junctions, what we used to talk about as being continuous footways. I don't know how to do those on a temporary basis, but that kind of thing can make it easier. He also mentions use of bell bollards to protect corners, and he talks about Old Shoreham Road. Those are his comments there and there. So, problems with pop-up cycle lanes still there, even though they're wider. Let's make them tighter and think about some form of speed table or blended junction. Okay, so now this is the UK outside London. This is a nice sign in Leicester. Leicester's been cracking on, although my view, some of the cycle lanes don't seem to be quite wide enough, but whatever. Good link there being filled in by the people in Leicester, so you can see each of the developments on that link. Right, now Hampshire. They've withdrawn a cycle lane and footway extension scheme on the A27 between Fareham Station and Bishopsfield Road today. It was only in for about 48 hours. That's bad news. It was taking out a general traffic lane on the A27, being taken out. Liverpool, oh dear. Do have a look at this YouTube. Pop-up lanes on the Kingsley Road. It's got kind of patchy light segregation and there's loads of cars parked in it. That's another problem with the advisory cycle lanes. How do we stop motor vehicles from being parked in them? Milton Keynes, apparently some of the pedestrianisation in Newport Pagnell has been stopped. Not a major thing, but I noticed this is what's happening in Bournemouth and Poole. Don't know how the people in Bournemouth and Poole feel about it. Bit of an effort being made by the council there. Shropshire, here's a link. One contraflow cycle lane, so not much for cycling or road space reallocation. I've quoted one of the Green Party people there saying, progressing on low traffic neighbourhoods? No, Any plans? No. Progress? None. 20 miles an hour? Where? And also talking about the cut in the bus services. Mole Valley, yes, this was tremendously lackluster and late. For example, considering, and that's the key word, not actually intending to do stuff, just considering clearing vegetation and badly parked bicycles. That's not actually major road space reallocation, Mole Valley, please. Okay, Greater Manchester, I understand that this is the Cyclops Junction at Royce Road in Hume, which has been given some kind of go-ahead. And I will ask Brian to say something about that at some stage. And another thing from today, on a junction, a cycle lane near the Timperley Junction in Altrincham, Trafford Council has removed the cycle lane, which is not good. Okay, now I do spend a lot of time on London, but yeah, you know, London is where stuff's supposed to be happening and it's not so much. I don't know if I mentioned these two articles, again, they're mandatory reading. Where's the pace? It's about the lack of speed in stuff happening. And here is another article with it, both of pace, the other is about design details. TfL schemes, Euston Road was supposed to be going in, but it appears it's only going to be 200 meters long and it hasn't got in. Hampstead Road, which Will Norman said is a nicely protected cycle lane, according to Linus Rees on the ground, it isn't. I don't know what's happened about the entrance to the Park Lane cycle lanes. So on their own schemes, not brilliant TfL. Regent's Park is still a problem. It's Crown Estate Paving Commission, but it would be nice if TfL could knock the heads together. Royal Parks, Crown Estate, Camden and Westminster. In terms of general TfL policy, as a report by saying we don't need Silvertown Tunnel. Professor Phil Goodwin has said, yeah, we really don't need it. So that's a stain on TfL. And we do need to get smart road user charging. Nice to see LCC making some noise about the need to have good congestion charging. Heidi Alexander said, oh dear, we've got 120 million needed for Hammersmith Bridge. So she should say, we're not going to do it. I mentioned the pop-up cycle lanes, and the congestion charge is now increased to 15 quid and running from 7 till 10, 7 days a week. It's now been opposed by the Tory mayoral candidate, although the Tory government really foisted it on Sadiq Khan. This is his announcement on June the 18th about all the things that should be are approved. I noticed it's an average of £43,000 per scheme, which shows they're doing a lot of supporting a lot of low-cost things, 114 low-traffic neighbourhoods, a lot of school streets, town centre changes, etc. However, and here's the details. I got these from Laura Laker. You will have seen these. And if you want to see every scheme, do go to that link. There's a sort of rough breakdown. But here I quote Caroline Russell in her comments made at London Assembly saying, okay, we've got 80 million quid for street space, but the Healthy Streets programs have paused. And so they're now having to share 60 million quid from street space. So there's a loss of 70 million quid across London, putting it all in context. Right, so also in London, I saw a temporary bike lane had been taken out. I'm not quite sure where that is. I did ask, I didn't get a response. Hackney, what they've got money for is 40 plus school streets to add to the 9 they've got. That's only from, it's only at the start and finish of each school day. Brent, yeah, we've had so much trouble. Sylvia, who was on here a couple of weeks ago, been struggling and struggling to get Brent to do stuff. They didn't get any money awarded. They put a rather poor, in my opinion, bid in, and they put it in rather late. Wandsworth got funding for Queenstown Road and 8 low traffic neighbourhoods. And also Richmond Park is eased the restrictions on cycling about time too. I did a thread on the boroughs that haven't got any money. And here are the usual suspects: Havering, Barnet, Buckingham, Dagenham, Bexley, who are notoriously anti-cycling in outer London. And in inner London, Westminster haven't got any money, despite the fact they put in some stuff. And I think that's because what they put in didn't have light segregation. They put an advisory cycle lane in Portland Place. And it's interesting that TfL have said, look, you're not doing, I imagine they've said, look, you're not doing what the government asked you, so you're not getting money. Also, Kensington and Chelsea haven't, although there's talk of cycle lane in Kensington High Street. And Greenwich has been a bit dubious about the stuff they've done. I thought there was some quite good stuff, but according to locals, it's been a bit dubious. Anyway, there's a lot more time for bids to go in and money to go out. I think over the next 3 weeks, there will be more funding allocated. So there's another tranche to come. Now, note this from Westminster. It's quite interesting. I don't notice so much the lack of segregation. It's a contraflow. And I don't worry so much about it being in the door zone because it's against doors being opened and passengers should see you ahead. But what's really interesting is this, that in order to accommodate these bloody wide vehicles, they've moved the parking bay out. Something that quite nice they've done from today. I noticed this is School Street, Westbourne Green, which is a nice kind of rolly thing that a caretaker and a couple of assistants can roll across. That's quite nice. Okay, campaigns, Transport Action Network, yeah, I mentioned every week. You can put your pins in maps, Cycling UK. The LCC one, I think it's still running. And there's a rather nice video from Oxfordshire Livable Streets called What is a Livable Neighbourhood? And it's quite nice for answering questions.
All right.
So I've done that slide, so we'll move on, right?
All right.
Message.
I'm with you.
This is about helping people, right? And as you've just been talking, we haven't just got one burning platform to cause action. We've got two, at least two. One is the climate emergency and the measures that are coming out that are having people screaming about pollution, and the other one is the COVID virus and how lovely it's been to have reasonably pollution-free cities where you can walk and cycle and play. But now the cars are back with a vengeance, increasing next week. Whilst the buses may have been limited because of social distancing, you probably have more of them on the road, and there's a lot of trucks to come. So what does that mean? It means a load more pollution, and worst of all, it means more accidents. So my chat is, if you go to the next slide, is about an idea I had as an individual, right? For all you great gurus to either rubbish or say, not a bad idea and help me get it better. And that's about teaching people to change their behavior. Because what's happened with COVID is we have found a few more polite, caring people, maybe a lot more. I think a lot of families are fairly aware of how to socially distant but still communicate. And I've certainly seen lots of examples of better travelling manners because not everybody's in a bloody rush to get from A to B. So how the hell can we achieve the sort of behaviour change across the entire travelling public that creates that better world that we all crave for the traveller? And I mean, a traveller can be in a car, he can be in a bus, but ideally more of them are on bikes or are walking. And when I say bikes, I mean bikes and micros. So to get behaviour change, you've got to explain what you want to change and do it. You need to educate a hell of a lot of people, like 60 million plus, somehow. And then somehow you've got to make sure the behaviour change is enforced. And I don't mean fined, I mean gentle cajoling as well as big stick. And to do that, in my experience, it needs a sort of campaign of motivation and reinforcement after you've done the initial education. Is that okay? So that's the environment I want to address. How can we travel safer? And here's my big idea. Next slide. And basically, yeah, for a profession, I'm a salesman, and I work for Commonplace, trying to do good deeds, in particular in the north. However, I'm also 73 years young, and I spend a lot of my time in the IT industry trying to teach people to put customers and people first and businesses second. And in that time, I've always believed in two things. One is the elevator pitch, which basically says this is what we do, how we can help you. And the other one is to have a simple cookbook or tips and hints guide that you use as you do your everyday job. So my idea is to create a simple pictorial cookbook about traveling safely. And I have 3 breeds of travelers plus an all-encompassing all. Yes, and what I want to do, see whether the idea has any legs in this very august forum, whether or not you'll help me turn it into something that's really useful, or it's just a sort of passing whimsy. And if you do help me co-create it, because co is very much flavour of the month nowadays, and co-develop it, I'd like to see it widely used by anybody who wants to brand it, use it, turn it upside down, whatever they want to do. Okay, so that's my big idea. What does it mean? Next slide, Brian. Right, in my mind, it's a very simple piece of digital presentation, an introductory page that basically is how to travel safe or encourages people to travel safe. Probably 5 or so pages about the common factors across all travellers, like staying awake, staying alert, being visible, behaving, yeah. And then a section for each type of traveller. Say 10 pages for walkers, 10 for micromobiles and cyclists, and say 15 for motorists. Small thing upon what you guys think. All I know is it's got to be a lot smarter and simpler than 160 odd pages of the highways code, and it's got to be focused on getting a simple message across and into the noddles of young and old, of all shapes and sizes. And so my simple final message was probably management summary. Can we get people to think safe and act safe in the new world that we've gone into now that, you know, lockdown's ceasing, social distances is shrinking, and people are back to hurrying about their business. So that's my idea. What am I asking you guys to do? Next slide, please, Brian. Well, if it's going to fly, I need help shaping the project from professionals, right, as well as from charities and anybody else, and family as well. And the biggest help you can give me is to help generate the 3 key lists in priority order: the ones for motorists, the one for cyclists, and the one for pedestrians. And then if you have got some content that you like, that you've seen, that you can plagiarize, cartoons, funnies, simple messaging, pictures, then if you haven't seen it, please create it and send it to me. And I'll polish and publish the product with you guys, the ones that want to contribute, and then I'll turn it into something suitable for every one of you to own, throw away, promote, whatever you wish. And if it lives, then we'll turn it into a version 1 and a version 2 during the next 6-9 months. So that's my call to action. You need to know what the task is for you guys, which is the last slide. Brian. Yeah. So each one of you, I'd value a straight yes, no, perhaps. Right. I'd like, if you're interested, to volunteer your lists, whether or not it's just a walking list or just a cycling list, or it's 200 pages of driving list. It's up to you guys. If you send any material or content to help me formulate it, suggest any improvements, because I'm not a PhD in this sort of stuff. I'm just a man of the world. If you like it and we say yes, then anything, email me. It's a very complicated email address for you guys. It's my name or Brian Deegan's name, and it's at commonplace.is, which I think most of you will have heard of in this world.
This is called the need for direct support for cycling. It refers to a scheme which I managed at London Borough of Ealing from about the turn of the century to 2013. I haven't worked there for 7 years. It's my own personal views. I don't know what Ealing is doing at the moment. I'm just talking about what I did when I was the council officer employed by London Borough of Ealing, funded by Transport for London. And this is a program called Direct Support for Cycling. This is not, repeat, not a substitute for what happens on the highway. It's not a substitute for having good quality policing, enforcement and deterrent sentencing. It's not a substitute for doing what we need to do in terms of charging motorists and having appropriate restrictions on use of motor vehicles. So just remember that to start off with. So what is DSC? Now, essentially, it's what it says on the tin. It's based around bikeability cycle training for adults and children, involving going beyond the basic training program. And it's about individual, good quality cycle trainers, not, I have to say, the typical road safety officer, or someone who is friendly with a typical road safety officer, or someone who just wants to waste a bit of time getting the kids riding bikes around the playground. It should be funded by well-trained professionals who are genuinely committed to getting people cycling and who are aware of the rights as well as the responsibilities of cyclists. It's basically everything which is not infrastructural, although it includes home parking, which I think you can call infrastructural. And it's organized to assist and facilitate cycling by people who really want to do this. And it's provision of what newbies, returners, or even existing cyclists may need. Now, you're going to look at a lot of stuff and say, I don't actually need this. Well, you don't have to need it, but you may. This is about what I think cyclists are entitled to, stuff we deserve. So I use as an illustration the puncture issue. Right, if you ride a bicycle, at some stage, you may get a puncture. Okay, so how do you deal with the puncture issue? So let's go through the list of things which should be available to people to deal with punctures. Doctor bikes. I ran up to 100 in a year. And the point of a doctor bike is you bring your bike along. It's not fixed for you. It is fixed with you, showing you what needs to be done. It's kind of empowering, you know, show a man how to fish, etc., etc. Maintenance classes, yeah, a lot of people have that. That's heavily, should be subsidized. You can have whole day or afternoon classes. After school bike clubs for children, so that if you want a puncture mended, the kids next door may have learned how to do it in the after school bike club. Support for local bike shops. You may need to let them have a business rate holiday or something like that to give genuine support for local bike shops, which are needed at times such as this. You might allocate subsidized puncture resistant tires. Support a network of local volunteers and campaigners to be available to give assistance. You may want to support mobile bicycle repair people. They're coming on stream. Hopefully they'll be out there on e-bikes. Now, none of these may be needed by many of you. You might just look at something on YouTube, but many people could benefit. So this is an example of something you will need to be able to address if you're riding a bicycle. And it's okay for those of us who are experienced, but we're talking about inexperienced people. So DSC involves, for example, confidence training of various kinds for adults and children. Doctor bikes, I've mentioned, maintenance classes. You can help with an organization which sets up some kind of local bike hub where it refurbishes recovered bikes and where roadworthy bikes are made available for people on low incomes as something which is subsidized by the council. That can help get a few people on low incomes to ride bikes. You can also give actual straight out subsidy. So for example, we ran a scheme whereby if you did cycle training as an adult in the winter, you would get a 40 quid voucher, which you could use for so-called winterizing. That would be puncture resistant tires, lights, money going towards a good quality waterproof, something like that. I have a big thing about a lot of people on low incomes cannot access good enough quality bikes. I do something which, if you remember the dangerizing debate, I expensivize cycling. Cycling can be expensive for a lot of people. If you want good quality waterproofs, good quality locks, a reliable roadworthy bike, for a lot of people that can be expensive. Tailored home parking. Now there are various programs of bike hangers, but I don't know how secure they are. They're sometimes a bit far away from where you live. You may want to have the kind of thing I did where we had bike bunkers, which are big lockers for 2 or maybe 2.5 bikes, 2 bikes, a kid's bike, which you can keep in your back garden. Councils don't like doing this, but it's what can be the most convenient option for people to have secure and convenient home parking. Now, as I say, you may not need it, but a lot of people do. One day we had a competition which was won by someone who was given a nice Dutch bike. And when he won it, he said, "Thanks very much. Can you keep it for me? I haven't got enough room at home. I don't want to leave it in the street." So, you know, if you're okay with carrying a bike up a few flights of stairs, leaving it out on the balcony, all right, that's fine. But a lot of people would feel better if they had access to secure and convenient home parking. And we also ran little weekly bike rides for Asian women in Southall. You know, you get these minority groups, Orthodox Jewish women in Hackney, and so on. People who won't cycle unless they're in a little group and you have someone showing them that it's a natural, everyday thing to do. I have to say the organization I employed, which is now no longer in existence, were very big on how you didn't have to have high vis and lids. And regrettably, a lot, if not most of what I see in terms of cycle training is high vids and lids, get out of the way of cars. This is a whole different thing with the emphasis on a kind of enabling and empowering approach. Also, there's some liaison with police at the Dr. Bikes with anti-theft programs, working with the police to work out how to target certain areas for surveillance. And a lot of the subsidy could be for good quality locks. Also, in terms of parking, secure anchors for people to keep at home. So it's not a substitute for doing what needs to be done in the physical environment. It's not about saying this is a dangerous thing to do, you're going to get killed, you have to learn how to do this. It's not about avoiding, it doesn't avoid the need for good quality law enforcement and sentencing or focusing on what we need to do about cars.
So here we go again, everybody. But yeah, so this is, like I say, it's not an exhaustive list. And if I offend any manufacturers by not mentioning their products, it wasn't deliberate. These are just some of my favorites. And I'll also do a little bit of a comment about how available they are. Starting with the cone there, we've got lots of those. At least put those out. Just to show a few ReadyWeld ones. ReadyWeld have had an enormous run on their products, and I'm told there's quite a delay now in getting the new batches through, but they are making them as quick as they can. One of my favourites is kind of the one-piece one-dorker. Well, you've got the classic Greenwich one-dorker as well, which I think is the kind of go-to, and it's the go-to because you've got the vertical and the kind of linear aspects to it. So the vertical, so motorbikes can see it and pedestrians can kind of observe it when they're crossing the road so they don't trip on it. And also the linear, so it looks like it's protecting the lane. It's got that strong linear effect. A classic and still out there, but there's quite a weight on it because I think everybody want them. I know it's like TFL's go-to. ReadyWeld also do the kind of flexible post, the Gislon highway is what I've shown here, 100 mil high. I quite like this one because they've taken it through junction, so I've been drawing a lot of inspiration from this one. But yeah, clearly they're pretty vertical and pretty visible. The kind of red variants as well are pretty good. The classics, quite hard to get a hold of ReadyWeld stuff in there, but it's still pretty good. Bolt on twice. Other manufacturers that do very similar things, I think the Rosehill Defender's pretty damn good. You've got a similar kind of effect, the linear with the vertical. Lots of people using these. They do them in different effects. Again, it's recycled rubber like the ReadyWeld ones, so you can feel a little bit better about that. And I'm told Rosehill have still got quite a bit of stock. So if anybody's thinking of purchasing these on that purchasing call, I'd give Rosehill a call quick before everybody gets that money for them. I've been trying to advise my clients that you might want to wait till DFT announce all the funding, because then it'll be a massive run on this stuff. Maybe get some in now, not sales. Another one they do, and ReadyWeld do a version of this as well, as the kind of cycle lane separator, the kind of fake bolt on curb, as it were. These come from like 200 to like 500 mil wide and put like a wand on it. Pretty good. I like to see more regular, bigger gaps in them personally, but at least you've got those gaps so they'll drain. My contribution to this product was those little gaps you can see down the bottom when they first put it together. I said, make sure it drains, make sure you can wash water through now. But yeah, pretty good products. Let's go through this. A little bit of a magazine shuffle through. And the most exciting news on the material front in light segregation over the last few weeks is that Zecler in Spain, who I'm a massive fan of their products, have done a deal with Marshalls over here, so we can get them a lot easier. I had to import stuff from Barcelona in the past, albeit it did get here quite quickly, and they've got a 10-week turnaround. But they have done this deal with Marshalls, who are arguably the biggest kind of furniture manufacturer and highway product stuff. So I'm a big fan of these, particularly at the moment in pop-up lanes. People are just kind of stopping the cycling, starting again at the other side. It's going to scare lots of new people cycling. You're there riding for your kids with your kids, and a bus swings in there. You do a shared bus border, you still got the full height to a light, and in this case, there's a kind of checkerboard pattern to warn people getting on and off the bus that cyclists might be going over into that area as well. Modular, slot them all together. You mightn't think it's the prettiest, but it does the job, and that's really what we're looking for temporary. So I'm quite excited about seeing stuff like this come to the UK. Ready Weld, I should say, have a kind of bus plate that you can load asphalt on, but again, I think they're struggling with supply on that. Another Ziegler stroke Marshalls product that I'm a big fan of, and really would be my segregation of choice, is their planter. They've got the Ziegler stuff, I should say, is made from plastic. It's recycled electrical wires, if you really want to get down to it. It's still pretty strong, though. They do a planter that, again, you just bolt in and gives you that kind of greening effect. It's purposely built to go in the carriageway. A good thing about them, you can double stack them if you think that visibility is going to be an issue. So they're quite a nice product, and the weight of them like holds it in place. You get that passive safety, and why not add a bit of greening? Some product designers might think it's a bit rough looking, but on the highways we need that, and at least there's a chance to add some greening to it and get some calming benefits that way. Okay, a couple more. Here's another Marshalls one that they're pushing, their kind of segregation device there, segregation unit. I put the kind of product names at the top for those interested. Again, it's a kind of bolt-on slot-in curb. I was going to put in the Charcon ones in here as well, which we used on a TFL. Some of them you do a slight bedding to put in, but anyway, the actual full concrete or granite effect curbs can still be used, and there's some cheap ways of applying those these days, so definitely worth a call. To go in a kind of prettier direction, I know Meristem, who do lots of parklets, I've been having conversations about what are some of their planters, which are quite nice. The kind of wooden ones can be fitted up so they could fit in the carriageway as well. Perhaps then you could combine it with like a birch hedge or something. You get some kind of air quality benefit. I think I talked about that on previous sessions. So I'm hoping Meristem can deliver on their planters. Few more. Cycle Hoop. I mean, I pretty much love all their kit, I have to say, but and I made this point the other week, and I'll make it again, that's where cycle parking should be, in the carriageway. And I like the fact that it's a car shape. It shows how many bikes you can get in the space of one car, and the actual shape of the car protects the bikes behind it. So again, they're quite expensive, but they're there and they're robust, and they keep the bikes safe. And let's get some of these products out there. I hope they don't mind me showing this, but they did send me a prototype of a corral, and in the interest of sharing and stealing people's pictures and stuff, because I can't get out beyond the Hertfordshire at the moment. There's not too many things for me to take photos of. Anyway, I showed one of their concepts for a corral, which I think is quite good for dockless bikes and stuff. You can geo-locate a point and say, just stick them all in that kind of corral things and get a bit of order. Again, for me, it's purpose-built for use on the carriageway, but you could put them in kind of larger public spaces, and at least it kind of warns people where all the bikes and scooters and all the rest of the paraphernalia might be dropped off. So I'm quite a fan of that. Bollards and more bollards. I think the NAL bollards, I'm particularly into passive safety, particularly when it comes to bollards. You don't want someone to crunkle up around it, and they can be quite tricky for cyclists if you bang into one of these things, if you're using it. These kind of fit into a casing that you put into the ground, but you can see the range there. It's worth looking at the NAL ones, because they've got a whole range of passive safety bollards, so choose whichever one you think's right for the context. But again, I don't think many people are thinking of these guys' bollards, but I think they're great, and we've got some around London as well also. Couple more things just to kind of finish off. Kind of access ramps. NAL do quite a good one of those, particularly if you're extending footways for pedestrians. Nice high grip surface. Again, put it together in kind of modular units. It can bespoke fit, go in there quickly. Why not do a decent ramp rather than just like a bit of asphalt, or not giving disabled people that kind of chance to socially distance. I think they're pretty good as well. And one more, just to think, give you lots of options. I'm a real big fan of this product. It's kind of down and dirty, but that's kind of why I like it. A real quick way of applying tactile paving. It's hard to see, but that picture on the top right there is kind of a little bunch of units that are kind of connected together, little blisters that you go in there, and you kind of cut them, the plastic, stick them on the ground, and then paint them with a kind of resin. And like it's an anti-friction resin that goes in, sticks to the ground. You can put in little transponders that can give information to people's phones to tell you where you are, tell them what kind of crossing you are. They've got all those features that go with it. But basically, paint on tactile saves a huge amount of time and effort, like cutting these things to fit round radiuses and the like. So I think we had Isabel Clement on several weeks ago now talking about how we have to make things accessible, and it's absolutely right. If we are putting in new crossings, doing stuff, there's a real quick, cheap, and for my money, very effective way of getting tactile into awkward situations in a quick way. So big shout out to the TacGrid crew there. That's basically what I wanted to say, just to show that there are options out there. Lots of these things are available. We need to start buying them up and get them out there on the streets. My fear is that we've gone back into another kind of planning cycle, rather than like the emergency do stuff now cycle. That's the vibe I'm getting from a few places, and I go like, stop planning, like start doing. You know, when someone like Leicester's putting out a mile a week, and the others are going, well, we're waiting for the TFT money, and then we'll start designing it, and then we'll think about the product specification. Like, oh, come on now, start getting with it and start planning these things now. So that's the end of my presentation.
Just as a sort of a general point, really, one of the things we're doing at the moment in Kent is trying to engage councillors and council officers in the art of the possible, because actually a lot of our council officers, our highways officers, are still using the design manual for road and bridges, and are fixed firm on 3.65 meters carriageway width, etc. And without trying to engage them in the conversation by sending on, design standards, whether it's the London Cycle Design Standards, the Crow Manual, or I think I picked off the internet the other day, the West Midlands Cycle Design Standards. I wonder if there's a case for pulling together case studies, a bit like you've just sort of shown with your slides now, to sort of visually open up conversations for struggling campaign groups like us to say, hey, this is what Bristol have done, this is what Leicester have done, this is what Nottingham have done. And particularly when they're, and forgive my sort of London colleagues here, when they're not London-centric solutions, people will a little bit more likely to listen because they see London as a particular special bubble.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Something like that could definitely go together, and I've made a note of it, and I'll ask my bosses whether we can put something together on best practice. It's tricky at the moment putting that, just the sheer practicality of not being able to get around and taking your own photos, but I'm sure we could put something a little bit unofficial out. I will say about the old school engineers, I spend a lot of my time going around and training my fellow engineers in just how to think about people walking and cycling, and not just the cars and not just the DMRB. And also I've been going around with here's all the stuff you can do presentation, which I gave here a few weeks ago as well, on what the options are and how to actually physically put these things in. It's a tricky one, and it leads back to that whole how engineers are trained. We've got an issue. I'm a highway engineer by trade and trained in DMRB. It's got no footways, it's got no cycling provision on it. It's as simple as that. And then you go work in a local authority and they go, right, when am I going to do this big bypass, and I'm going to get my super elevation figured out there, and they want to start applying formulas, and we go, well, actually, this is by a school, and there's a residential estate there, and they all want to go there. I'm like, oh. So yeah, for me, there's a lot of retraining we have to do and just get people in there, but I treat it in a technical way for engineers, and I think that's why I get to do a lot of training, because I've been on that journey myself to how to make it work. So they've got to change. The business as usual, just do road stuff is definitely coming to an end. If they've not read the papers, they need to look at it. But we're just not going to be throwing this stuff out there. There's a whole bunch of legal challenges going through there. And we had it in Greater Manchester when people saying, when are we going back to doing the normal stuff? We're going, this is it. It's walking and cycling. It's placemaking. It's like filtered neighbourhoods, low traffic neighbourhoods. This is the game that you need to start playing and start building to. And we need to get the whole country going. So happy to help. I think I've actually taught down in Tunbridge before, but I can't remember now.
You know, as ever, as per my presentation last week, I'd argue it's not the engineers that is the primary issue here. As ever, it's always the politicians. It's the cabinet leader. It's the cabinet. You know, it's the cabinet lead on this particular topic. You know, highways or environment or whatever it is. It's the mayor if you've got a mayoral system or whatever. Those folks are not kicking the engineers to do better. You know, if you've got a good politician, they will kick the engineers until the engineers start moving and getting their professional development, asking people like Brian, help, we're being kicked. How do we do this stuff better? Yeah. If you've got really good engineers, and quite a lot of places, they've got really good engineers who are keen to do stuff, they're just being stymied by the politicians. So you've got to get the political will.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. But in some cases as well, the politicians will go to their lead engineers and go, can we do this? And they go, no, you'll get 20,000 letters all saying it's a nightmare. The network will go down. You'll face like legal issues from the failing your network assurance duties. The lines are all there from our side as well. So I think there's, you know, we've all got to learn to change. We've got to get on the front foot and make that choice to change.
Yeah, it's a two-way flow. I was the chief officer of the council in York. And the councillors would always say to the officers, can we do this? Is it legal? What problems will we face? We shouldn't minimise that. The second thing is that active travel infrastructure doesn't win elections. And so for politicians who are weak about it, as campaigners, we just need to be super aware of that. Locally, I'm in Bristol. I always say to them, buy a Eurostar ticket to Amsterdam. It's direct now from St Pancras. I think it's 2.5 hours, and just have a walk around and see what the future looks like. And the last thing I'd say is we're lucky because the head of strategic traffic lives on my road for Bristol. So I've been out looking at livable neighbourhood changes with him with a tape measure. So I've got confidence that something might happen, because quite often the good officers are stopped by the politicians. And I think we need to be clever as campaigners, learn from London, be savvy, really.
You're saying about design engineers clinging to DMRB versus anything else. DMRB has a manual and a set of instructions and a load of geometry. Nothing else does. So as a design engineer who wants confidence that what they do will work, they don't have a single place to go and find the answer. So the manual for streets essentially is a concept guide that doesn't have detail. They can see this is what something looks like. Manual for streets, I think, predated Poynton, so people say you can't do it on a high volume road, but we know you can. I think we need one place where we put everything, modern urban design, whether it's, you know, Phil Jones stuff, whether it's not Bexley Heath, where was the one he showed us with the virtual pseudo zebras and the different cycling structure. This stuff's in one place and says, this is what we did, and it worked, and we had lower speeds, and we had lower casualties, and it worked. That would give designers confidence. I see confident designers who just don't know what the answer is because they've got 100 people giving them 100 different instructions. Yeah. And if we put this stuff in one place, it would really help.
Yeah, no, I really agree. It was almost like the exact picture I gave. I was trying to do a design manual for streets was what I was pitching about a year ago, and I couldn't quite get anybody nationally to kind of grab on it. But I then took that to Greater Manchester and said, well, let's do the design guide there. And I basically had a volume by volume reconstruction of the DMRB. Everybody went, that's way too much. I was going, no, that's what we need. That's enough. So I've got another ally now, Kate, and I'll say, as endorsed by Kate.
Completely.
I'll send you all the ideas that we had. I did a massive pitch for how we could put that together.
We looked at doing, CIHT we had a kind of brainstorming session about a volume 3 of Manual for Streets, which was about kind of what we saw as the stuff that wasn't covered it by edge of urban roads, 40 miles an hour, edge of towns, edge of villages, you know, villages with no frontage development, those kind of places. CIHT could be a good place to do that, you know, with Rhys Jeffries funding, for example.
All right, I'll send it you over tonight so you can see the full pitch
Yeah,
that we did.
really happy to support that.